He gonna want to sew that up. So James went, we got a little kit there. He went and got some peroxide and poured on it, and I shut it together. And he taped it real tight. I believe he taped it with duct tape, and it healed up so pretty. You can't even see, hardly see the scar. But I didn't want to go to the doctor with it. And I walked by him one day. He had that little Milwaukee sander there. They turned about 10,000, and he was sanding something there, and the cord laying on the floor. And I went by it. He had like a loop in it. I caught my foot in that loop and jerked her out of his hand, and all he had on was a t-shirt. She wound that t-shirt right on up and cut a half moon in the shirt. Yeah. So we've had some close calls. But so far, I've still got all my fingers. But
you done good. You ain't like Rodney Rose.
Yeah.
He got hurt, did he?
Yeah, he got just about every one of them, didn't he?
Have you seen that boat that he's redone?
Yeah, he stretched her out.
Yeah, he launched her yesterday. Matter of fact, I was up there and I took some pictures of her. She looks good.
Yeah, he made her longer. Well, the fellow that originally built that boat, of course, Peter helped him. Eddie's father there helped him some on her, but the man that originally started her, my father went with him to get lumber and help. Well, he didn't do no work on the boat, but he went with him and got lumber for him and knew him real good. But that fellow just left there. His father, I had built him a boat some years back, and they want to do some work to her. But he's got a home down crossing Calico Jack down there.
How big a boat? Was that something you put in here? Or?
Yeah, she was only 23 foot.
I got you.
And,
well, it's something to do, I reckon.
Well, you got to take what you can get.
Take what you can get.
So.
When did you build this boat here?
I built her for Graydon Storm.
Yeah, I remember the boat.
One of my goals in life is to own that boat.
But it was about 40 years ago or a little better, somewhere along in there.
40 years ago.
No. What he had in her now, you couldn't buy the lumber for. That little bit right there in them horses, you see there in them sawhorses, a little bit of Jennifer, $480.
I know. I bought some boards from Rodney last year.
That's where they came from Rodney.
I bought because I redone my boat, and it was 4 5/4 boards, and some was 9, 10. I tried to get them white I could. Was $150 for 4 boards.
Well, like I say, that little bit was $480. Which I talked to him last night there in Oak Cove, and he's supposed to be here in the morning sometime. But he said it had just been so bad down there.
Yeah.
Because he lives right out on the beach, you might say. We've had some rain. Houston, Mary's down.
Yeah.
Anthony come with her?
Yeah.
Yeah, I told her to come look at that.
Well, Houston, you didn't. Let's see, how can you put this? You didn't succeed too well. You went from boat building to babysitting.
Yeah.
Which was the worst?
Well, I like babysitting.
They had to
Just
fix
tie
his
you
roof.
down a little bit.
Oh
He's
man!
had all this rain, his roof been leaking.
Oh my goodness!
And I've carried him 10 gallons of roofing cement. But you got to stop now, right?
Right now, I have.
It's not raining.
Man's supposed to come shingling for nothing.
Yeah, I told Landon this morning. I said, you know, Mr. Houston, he's just babysitting now. He said, what?
Now he worked with us when we needed him.
Yeah.
I mean, all this
Yeah,
little
work
stuff
on
there.
it all.
We don't do it.
Yeah, he was working yesterday.
Man's supposed to come shingling, but he's got so much work ahead of him that has so much rain, he can't catch up on it. And he said he'd get there in about 3 weeks. I hope I can keep it.
Yeah, we've been by
in what I got.
Cecil Gillikin. You know where Cecil used to work at Barber's?
Yeah.
Went by his house one day this week there, and that's what his sister had a crew on top of her house.
$10,000 shingle. And when I shingled it first time, it was $3,500. Been about 20 years. and that's how much it's going up. And that's not including, it's got the flash by chimney, and it's got some rock wood around it where the wood went against the chimney, it's always leaked. So you got to take that up, that's gonna be extra.
The last
So I figure about
hurricane we
12,000.
had, he
Shingle
blew
your
these
house.
doors in, and
In the
But-
house?
it blew them in this way, and we had that 45-foot boat sitting out front during that. And, anyway, what I was starting to say was, I don't know what I was starting to say, you leave me just like that.
Yeah, it's all good.
But, what I was gonna say, my next door neighbor there lives right alongside of me. James come in there that night, said, we're losing a lot of shingle. You can hear them hitting the house. And, I had just had it.
How would you explain that to somebody who?
It's probably hard to explain. Nobody's never seen it. What we do. But you can do most anything you want to with it.
Yeah, it's sort of like a house. Like if you want to add a room on a house, you can go down and add a room on it. If you want to make a boat longer, you make it. If you want to make it shorter, you make it shorter. Cut her off. It just changes her profile a little bit. You know,
Well-
when you add on.
The boat that he was just talking about, Rodney, that was a 38-foot boat, I believe, before. And he went there and cut her off, and he added 12 feet to her. And you go and look at her, and she looked just like she was built in the original, like that. Now, I don't know if she could do that with a glass boat or not. But that's one advantage I think they got, is you can change them, do whatever you want to with it, with wood.
A workboat that y'all were making for so long in your careers now, would the owners request changes like that? Like, would they want to extend a boat or transform it from one kind of fishing to fit another kind of fishing?
Sometimes.
Refit them?
Yeah, sometimes they do. If like if they've been regular boats has gotten too small for what they want to do, sometimes they want to make them bigger, or deck her over and put a waist around her and cabin. All that can be done and change the boat from one type of fishing to a completely different type of fishing. And also, like a wooden boat, to build one, you can get one customized however you want it. In other words, a fiberglass boat, you go there and every one of them's just alike because out of a mold. Or a wooden boat, they can tell us what they want, the size, width, length, and how they the style. And you go there and you start from scratch from a pile of lumber, and you build a boat to what they want. And that's the biggest advantage nowadays of a wooden boat, is the customization of it. So that's really got a lot more to play in today's day and time with work done with wooden boats. And then of course you still got some people that still wants the traditional boats, that like the one that we just built last year, the 45-foot boat. He wanted the round stern boat like the ones that was built in Marshburg back in the 30s, and that's you can't get a fiberglass boat like that.
But he changed all the inside though. It wasn't like it was a round stern boat, but it wasn't like a work boat.
On the outside, it was like.
The hull was.
Inside, it was
The hull was like that, but the rest of it was
He
more like
wanted
a sport
profile
boat.
of those boats.
Because he used to go out on the Albatross fleet down in Hatterson, and they were round stern boats.
In Houston yesterday, you kind of mentioned that if this was in your dad's time, that making some of those changes that have been requested recently would have gone against the grain a little bit.
Yeah,
But
Daddy.
he was on the stubborn side.
Yeah, Daddy was kind of stubborn. If somebody wanted something done to a boat and he stopped and looked at it, and he said, "No, I ain't gonna do that. She'll be so ugly you won't be able to walk by her, you know." So he wouldn't do things. He would compromise with a man. Man would compromise a little bit with him and get her where she looked halfway decent, you know.
Yeah.
Like for instance, a man wanted the cabin wrong on her nose, you know. He said, "No, I ain't gonna do that. Not like that. If you let me do it like I want to do it, well, do it."
So is he thinking like the ugly, beautiful, I mean, it's like it would work, would it still work?
Oh, yeah.
I think
yeah.
probably what it mostly might have been, I don't mean to cut him off, but if somebody asked him where was that boat built, they're going to tell him who built it.
Yeah.
He's going to get the blame for
Yeah.
it. It's
See,
not
most time the man having her built, he can't tell if she's pretty or not. The one building her is one one wants to look good, you know.
'Cause that's your advertisement, I think.
All you gotta do is be a one ugly one, and it ruins your reputation.
And
People say so and so.
all ours not turned out just like we wanted them to. Sometimes they see things when it's too late that you would have done different, but.
But you had to take that chance more than your
Yeah.
dad had to.
Yeah, but Daddy, he would, of course, he'd compromise with. I mean, he would, you know, most time he would go along with it, but he would put his 2 cent worth in there to get her to look halfway right, you know.
Way he thought it ought to be. So. But
So when did that start changing, as in terms of your relationship with customers?
Well, when we
We've
started,
always-
we'd do anything they wanted.
yeah, I'd
You
do
know,
it.
We'd do
If he
any,
wanted to put
any
the
kind
cabin
of way.
on stern, I'll put it on stern. It's
Yeah,
his
we'd do
boat.
anything
He's
you
the one
want to do.
paid for it. So, but I've always do what they want or try to do it if we could.
There are some times though that things that we have to do that the customer, it's more in the best interest of what they're doing. In other words, they don't understand the reason for doing it is more of a structural reason than and safety reason than the actual aesthetics of it. So there is some things that for safety reasons and that you have to do something a different way than what they want it. But most time, 99% of the time, we try to go right along with what the person wants. So that's about the only difference today.
There's some things you can't.
They want.
Yeah, you have to draw the line someplace.
Yeah.
Well, this was before James started working with us, but the fellow we built all the trawlers for from Atlantic, he came to us one time, and a friend of his had a factory built boat, plywood boat. And but anyway, he wanted that boat restored, so we went down there, me and Houston, you with me once, and looked at her. His name was Leslie Morris from Atlantic. And we looked at her. I told him, I said, Leslie, we can take the measure and build one like this. I said, but we can't restore this one. He said, no, I want this one restored. I said, there's no frames in her. Oh, well, you take the sides off, she's gone. And we couldn't.
Couldn't explain to him. He keeps saying, I want that boat.
He
I
said,
said,
no,
well,
I
we
want
got the glass over. No, I don't want to do that. I want her restored.
I said, if we take the sides off, she's gone, there's nothing there to work from. I said, we can take measure and build one like her as near as we could. No, I want that boat restored. I said, well, you can't. If you take her apart, there's nothing left. And we got out of that job. We never did do it.
Never did have to do
But we
that.
couldn't get him to understand it. Well, all she had was a strip around the top, one around the bottom, and had a stern in her and a stem. If you took that was all rotted, she was plywood. I said, if you take that off, there's nothing left. Yeah.
I think there's a Chris Craft.
Yeah.
That boat had a shelf life.
Yeah.
There's nothing you could do
She
with
would be
that.
out of mahogany plywood. And
Yeah, and she
rotted.
wasn't glassed or anything, just plywood.
She's been set up for a long time with nothing but fresh water
I
done
don't-
into her and it had ruined her.
I think she had just been varnished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, she wasn't, they having paint on her.
Mr. Steve was telling us yesterday about a story. You remember this, Billy? About racing a factory-made boat versus a wooden boat. I believe that was your race. Was that correct?
Probably Sutton you're racing that time.
There was a guy that come down, I've heard you tell the
Fred
story.
Sutton.
Man come down here with a factory boat and
Yeah.
you was racing him in yours.
Fred Sutton too, well.
Well,
broke
I
your
raced
rudder.
Fred
Yeah,
Sutton,
you
but
broke your rudder.
that was out across from the school. And see, mine was a homemade deal. His
Probably
was
one
a
down before-
factory boat, and he had a Hemi head Chrysler in her. All I had was a little 58 Buick. She was 300 horsepower. Which the one I showed the picture of. And so we run down that way, and we come to the buoy, fellow with me, and we had took the bearings out of a Pontiac, where he had, and put in that 401 Buick. And you talk about being tight, we had to have two 12-volt batteries to turn her over. She was so tight. But she had always, by my speedometer with my motor, she would rest her 64. I never did see her go to 65. But that day she blew the speedometer hose off of her, so she was going faster. Of course, had a little bit more power. But when we come to that buoy, I went to turn her and nothing doing. We kept right on going that way. And the fellow's name was Bill Guthrie, he knows him. But He said, turn her. I said, well, I can't turn. I am turning her as far as she. But when we finally got her straightened up, when we headed back toward, well, it was running toward the Easter there. When we opened her up that time, somebody later told me they could see the strut on her. She was come so far out of water. But anyway, when I slowed down, the top of my rudder, the tiller, the top was broke off. I didn't have any rudder. That's why I couldn't turn her. I had the steering wheel turned, but the boat kept going. And make a long story short, he got that boat later years after I had her, and he put a big Oldsmobile in that boat. And him and my other brother, they was out there in her one Sunday morning. Of course, shouldn't have been out there on Sunday anyway, but anyway, they opened her up and she wrung the dry shaft off from the motor to the V-drive, rung that 2-inch pipe into. I think what happened, she busted a coupling. Anyway, part of that come out of her, they had 2 bucket seats right between them, and went out there and knocked a hole in her deck, bouncing like that. He come ashore, says, time to get rid of this thing. So we got rid of it. But I was racing a Charles Manley out to the bridge, first one I had. And that was the first boat I had. She was running about 15, 16 feet. And anyway, we were right about side and side running. He had a Buick in and I had that wore out 283 Chevrolet. But I was still we were right side and side. And that guy looked around and he was gone. And all I saw was the nose of that boat a-bobbing. Saw her heads popping up out yonder. The bottom come off of that boat. And you talk about something sinking in a hurry. When you draw a 4x8 sheet of plywood off the bottom, she sunk in a hurry. I mean, tied 2 of them to the hospital where he threw them in the motor. I mean, she stopped so quick. But the whole bottom come off of her. And I had another one. Me and him was out there in them one day, threw both of us overboard. And kept right on going. Made a big circle. Come back, he had waist boots on with just his chin out. And she come back around, and I told him, I said, try to get out of the way of that boat. And when she come by me, I tried to get aboard her, but she was going so fast I couldn't. And she went on out yonder, she got splutter and stopped. She had to give out of gas. And I had told the fella that wanted us to go out there and run her that I didn't have any gas, but he wouldn't take no for answers. But it's a good thing I didn't have any gas. I'd been repairing boats today. Because she was right offshore on all them island boats.
So would you say that all of this racing and all these other things, that you actually kind of taken these boats to their limits? You think you pretty much know their limits in terms of?
Well, I think probably my brother, well, who I'm talking about, Paulie, he still got it in him. Every time him and Steve gets together, that's all they talk about is racing. And he's bad as he ever was. But he's had a lot.
Materials and stuff today is a whole lot better than what they have back there when they were doing that racing.
Yeah, the motors is hard to get now too.
Well, the motors are incredible.
Well, the boats nowadays are built way on or stronger than what they were back there then. You got a lot better materials and stuff that you build them out of back there. And Daddy was doing all that racing, and they didn't have no such thing as epoxy. And the glue they used was welded glue, and after that got some age going to it, that would go away to nothing. And as later years came along and got the epoxy and then fiberglass cloth and fiberglass them, nowadays you can take the same boats that they were running back there in the 60s with at that time, 6-mile-an-hour range. Nowadays you can take the same boat and run them well over 100 mile an hour and it don't do nothing to them. So it's got a lot to do with it over time. The progression of materials and the building styles and stuff has changed over time.
That welded glue, that was just a little better than nothing. I mean, there wasn't much to it, because I repaired a boat one day. A fella was messing with his motor. He started her, and she jumped ahead, and a piling went through the bow of her. He got me to fix it for him, which I had built the boat originally. And when I cut her out there to repair, you couldn't tell there ever been any glue in her. It was just going, well, you mix it with water, and it's just, like I say, just a little better than nothing. So.
You know, well, we've got the 3 of you here. I would like to revisit one question about your design and about the design of all the Corsound ships and that beautiful rounded curve. When Rodrigo was on the boat yesterday, he got some great footage of her just cutting through the water. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that shape and I understand that you all are some of the only ones left,
What
you know,
what
that
boat
do it.
were you talking about?
Steve's boat.
Oh, Steve's boat.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's nothing different. I mean, what we do, we call it dead rise, the V in the bottom,
Right.
and most of the time we put it right ahead of the motor, and it's got tunnel. It's a tunnel drive, and most of the boats around here, the reason they put the tunnel because we got so much shallow water, and it does help them as far as drawing water. And
They put flyer into them, got flyer inside on them, and what they're talking about what one of the last ones does it is the traditional way of building it. A lot of boat builders now has want to cold mold it, which is a lot on are designed on computers, and the computer cuts stuff out, and there's very few still left that builds them from traditional
like
buildings,
Steve's.
starting from a pile of lumber. You get there and you know what you're going to build. You'll build a cradle or set up the keel, and then you start. Either you time out or set the keel, and then you start laying your frames off on that. After you get your frames laid off, then you start planking onto her, and you plank them out of juniper, and you use usually about 1.25 to 1 inch strips to come up in that flyer, and each one of them strips is nailed usually about 3 to 4 nails between a 16-inch frame, and each strip is glued so that you got a good bond there. And then the dead rise, a lot of people use degrees for the bottom, and we go by inches, how many inches of dead rise that we put into them instead of degrees, because degrees is going to stay the same no matter the width of the boat, but inches is going to change depending on the width of the boat. So somebody wants there, say, so many inches of dead rise in a boat that's 5 foot wide. Somebody wants the same amount of inches in a boat that's 7 foot wide. Well, it's the same amount of inches, but it's going to be flatter in the water boat, whereas a degree is going to stay the same. And you got logging up there, and we like to do something different in logging. We take and kind of hollow them out, and it gives them more of like a flyer in the logging of the boat, which is in the V of the boat. And
Let me show you.
then you got the flyer of the boat, and everything. You want everything to kind of flow together in a true look into it, and that's what they're talking about is the design of them. And it's
See this, the boats he's talking about. This is the way they started. That's the way she started, right there.
Mm-hmm.
And the dead rise he's talking about. Most of the time we come like in Steve's boat. He's right ahead of the motor. We'll put the motor dead rise, and then it works out. Well, from there forward, they cut them all the same dead rise. But when we start going aft, we start dropping off. And but that's like the tunnel, but in the logging, we call it a logging. Some other people might, but that's just right up to the stem there. We block it in, and then you shape it like you want it. And but we have put some where we planked it this way instead of lengthways. And I like it doing it like that, but this particular boat here, he wanted it blocked because he used it for pound netting, and a lot of times they run into stobs and posts. He wanted it for something, but that's the stuff. Which there you can see what we call logging right there. Good. See that's blocks, and then you shape it.
Yeah.
Like if you're making a decoy or something, you shape it like you want it. But that's the type of bottom that most of these boats have got. And most of them pretty much the same, but some of them might have a little different. But that's you can see it there how you've got the hull.
used to on here, just like everybody could build a boat. They go in their backyard and build a boat. But a lot of those people have died off, and the younger generation never really picked it up and learned it. So there's very few people nowadays that can really still go and build a boat from scratch. And it's really a dying art, because there's the newer generation, like I said, are just not picking it up like the older generation did. And their interest is in other things, and that's one reason that we're one of the few that still builds the traditional core sign boats the way they used to do it in the old days.
Yeah,
And,
it's used to there. You could, if you had a boat like that, like having money in the bank, you could sell it just like that. But nowadays it's kind of dropped off a lot.
But your son's learning.
Yeah, well, the little bit he's got about that building he's got from us, because where he works at now, that he still works with a boat builder, is cold molded. It's not the traditional strip plank boats. So there's a little bit of difference into it, and that's why he still prefers the old style, because I mean that's what he grew up knowing is that style, and he likes the older type boats, and he wants to still learn how to do that. So that's a plus. And there are a few that still trying to teach it. Steve Guthrie, he's still teaching it to East Carter. That's one good thing about East Carter High School. They have got a boat building program where they are still trying to teach a little bit of it and try to keep it from dying out. But I don't think their classes is all that big. But like I said, it's the newer generation. Their interest is in other things, and fiberglass boats is so easy for them to go and buy nowadays. They can go to a store in the morning, buy the boat, go ride that evening. Whereas a boat, to have her built, you got to place the order and wait for it to be built. And that's what I was talking about earlier. The customization is really the thing that still keeps it going. If it wasn't for that, it would probably die out in a hurry. But being able to customize them lets people pick the boat they want and build her the way they want it. So,
But this style boat too takes a lot of nails, because when you strip it, because you pin them about 6 inches apart like that. And most of the time, way we used to, we would put a solid board on first along, and then start stripping as we got up in the flyer. But later years, we started stripping them from the start, go right on with it. But it makes a solid boat like that. But it takes a lot of nails.
Well, now I understand that some of you also make models of these boats.
Yeah, Houston's the model. He does a lot of models.
Are you spending some time doing that these days?
They had
Once
decoys.
in a while, once in a while.
He does
maybe.
decoys too.
And decoys, and
Yeah.
James, you do decoys, right?
yeah, I'm the show chairman for the Courtside Decoy Festival. And
Yeah, I think I told you about him shooting the sign.
No, tell that story. James, tell us a story about that sign you made and what happened to it.
last year I made a new sign, had a decoy onto it that I had painted, and had the sign company make it. And after the show was over, I came up there that Monday morning. Somebody shot the sign, shot the decoy on the sign right in the head. So, but you can't do nothing for some people, but somebody didn't have nothing else better to do. But
That was a $400 sign too.
yeah.
And didn't you say, Jamie, that you kind of predict that was coming?
Yeah, I told my wife, I said, somebody shoot that, because they can't resist it. You feel?
But decoys and model boats is basically still about the same thing. Like Houston there, me and Bo's made model boats, and both of them make decoys. And he's got a booth in the show, which he can tell you more about that than I can. But it's all, in a sense, basically dealing. A decoy, in a sense, is a small boat, because you got to have them to float right in the water. So it's all kind of relates in together. Until a lot of people around here, they always hunt it. And making decoys back in the old days, people that built boats, they would take lumber left from boats and make decoys from them. And so it still all kind of relates into one another. And,
And I know that you need to be going soon. So, is there anything else that you would love to you think it's important to share that we were talking about the hammer story. We're talking about maybe what yesterday. I'm just trying to get better sound. We talked about a hammer. We talked about the dangers. You told that story about your pants being the dangers of the
The grinder.
Of everything, just all the material, the chemicals, and.
I was telling about the day I walked by and jerked sander out of your hand. Got my foot caught in the
Is there anything before so we can let Houston go?
Yeah, Houston, he can tell you about getting the epoxy or the fiberglass onto it.
Well, I told you about that yesterday.
If they want to tell him again.
Well, all the glassing, and that day was really hot, And of course, when it's hot, you got to go flying with it. Of course, I had it up like this and drag it before I knew it. I had poured the oil down I just poured the oil down my pants, and of course, it was hot. And I come out of my pants. I had to pull them off in a hurry. Cause by the time I got them off, he had turned to gel. He would have took the skin right off of me if I hadn't got them off.
I mean, that resin starts setting up, it gets real hot.
Yeah, it actually smokes.
What it is when it's combined in a small area, it builds up heat.
Yeah.
If we can crank it out of that machine, if it's hot, we use a lot of these plastic water jugs to mix it in. And times you stir that up, you can feel the bottom of that, it starts getting hot right then. And you got
that. If you let it sit on you, it burn you.
I glassed some boxes one time for a feller that they put on. This before all the poles was took off the beach, light poles, and it was like telephone boxes, and it wasn't about too big, very big there. But he wanted me to glass them, and I didn't put cloth on them. I just painted them with epoxy, and it was hot then. And that stuff started getting hot. Kind of, I went to that door with it, and times I got that door, it was boiling over. It set up so fast. And we're using the slow hardener. They make a tropical too. Sometimes it's probably what you need, but in the wintertime, you got to wait 2-3 days. It takes that much effect on it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And oh yeah, I remember one last thing. This would be definitely a good clincher. We were talking about the pride of the motivation of doing, and one was like, this is what I do. And the other one, then you said, but there's this pride, and this is Steve was talking about how the reason people say that they want your boat is because they know you have carefully taken your time for every detail, not rushed it. I'd love to hear a bit about how you feel about the pride and what role that plays in your in how you do the things.
Integrity.
Right. The integrity of
Your work.
Well, all I know to do is do it the best I know how. That's all I can. And like I say, sometimes I still make mistakes, do something wrong, but I try to do it best that I just in my head, and that's about all I can do. I mean, just do the best I can. I mean, 'cause I feel like that's your advertisement. I mean, we've never have advertised except, well, you have put it on Facebook now, but all the years that me and him worked together, we never did advertise. It just word of mouth. People would recommend us or whatever, but I just, like I say, we've done it best we could, and that was all we could do. But there's a lot of good boat builders on there. I mean, for a word, there's a lot of them died, but there's not too many doing it now, except I think Alex up here. And there's a feller up the west that's got a big boat in his backyard, that Terry Guthrie there. He built one or two, and they're about 60 foot sport fishing boats. And the one he's got now, he's not been able to sell this one. He'd build them on the side and try to sell
By
it.
himself. 60 foot long, building by
Well, I
himself.
think he got his grandson to help himself.
Some of them are one time he was doing it by himself till his health got to getting a little bad,
Before I took you yesterday to look at the boats, well, he's down that same path. She was right over to the right going down that way. But it's a sport fishing boat, but he's not been able to get rid of this last one. But she's still there, I mean. And I don't know I think he's got her plank, sides of her plank. I don't know if he's got decks on her or not, but it's a good sized boat.
The kind of thing you want to do the best you can, because that's your life's work, and everything, every time you build one, it's something, that's a new boat, it's a different than the one before, every one's
One of a
different.
kind.
And so you want every one of them to turn out the best you can. Because you want the ultimate thing is you want to make the customer that you're building it for happy. That's the main thing. And if you can get the customer happy, well, you've done your job. If nobody else don't like the boat, the customer likes it, that's all that matters. And
I've had
so-
one or two customers that was hard to get along with. I built one boat there in my father's yard up before we had this other place, and it's 26 foot, and he was a retired Coast Guardman, and he smoked the pipe. I don't know why he was smoking in that pipe, but he was from down east, down Stacy, and I had the boat pretty much built and working inside the cabin. He would come every morning, and like the two, we call them bunks down, he knows what I'm talking about, down the side or lockers, whatever. He sat on one of them what time I was working there with that pipe looking right at me. And that would get to me. You can't. I make enough mistakes by myself, but you take somebody right there looking right over your shoulder. And I was glad to get rid of him.
Yeah, especially the owner.
But he would come every morning.
The reason I was mentioning is because these days people want everything in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
That's the culture. People think that everything is fast because they're used to fast food and the fast things that are made overseas and people forget that it takes time to do something right.
Because you're doing it all by hand, and there's not nearly two of them is alike. They're all different. And what you do for one might not work on the next one. You had to make some changes, but we just do the best we can is what we can do.
Do you ever have people like not believe you when you told them your boat was built by hand? Because it looked.
Well, we had a console here one time that we had built, and somebody came and asked us where we had it shipped in from. And
Nobody put
we told them that we got it from Safers, which is a local building supply store that sells the plywood and materials. So, but they stopped looking at them boats like that, them shiny boats, and some people it's hard for them to understand that you get them, more especially the new boats where you're painting with automotive type paint, that you get them slick like that. It's hard for them to understand that it's a wooden boat underneath of it. But something that they don't stop and think about either is every fiberglass boat, the original boat was a wooden boat because their plug is made from wood, and then they make the mold off of the plug.
Because me and him.
So every fiberglass boat that you see on the market actually comes from a wooden boat.
Because me and him built 4 plugs for Parker boats, and he got rich. But we built the original boats and got him going. The hull, he made the glass boat off of. And then Maycraft, we built a couple for them. And
When I first got married, my wife asked me, she said, "Can you guarantee them boats?" I said, "Yeah." She said, well, how do you guarantee them? I said, "I guarantee she'll float." And that's all I ever told her. She said, "How do you know she ain't going to turn over?" I said, "I'll guarantee she will not turn over." Because she won't. Unless you put enough weight on the side of her. And then I doubt she will. She'd sink before she turned over. You know, she's laying so far. But I told her, I said, "I guarantee she'll float." Never had one to sink. That when you boat. Go and you turn your glass her and put 5,200 between the beams, frames, she ain't gonna sink.
the glass boat I sure, that belongs to my other brother. But that was because his deck drains was leaking around him, and she got down low enough that the inside deck drained, and that's what water got running in. And the other, who was it called us first? Stevie said that his boat was down there sinking. When we went down there, we said, "She's not sinking, she's already sunk." Only thing with that was the nose of her. She was bottom. But what made me think of her was I was trying to move her, I was worried about her wanting to turn over. She's full of water. And because they had to move her up to the ramp to try to get her out of water. But he's had her out there, and of course he's got his motor running. He ran her yesterday there a long time.
They sound like they're survivors, a lot of those boats.
where my brother Paul used to work there at East Bay, when they would build these your boats, they would, Coast Guard would come out and they would take cinder blocks,
Yeah, if you carry
hundreds of them, and put it on one side to see how much you would list, you know, compared to the people's weight.
Oh.
In case everybody run to one side, keep the boat from
Right.
turning over.
Yeah, all these head boats, they had to do
Had to
that.
do that in kind of the Coast Guard, had to be approved, you know. He said they'd be spending half the day toting blocks, you know, putting them on one side to get her to lean,
See how much she listed.
see how much she would lift. And he said all of them would
Not bad.
well hold the weight, you know, they just barely listed, you know.
I think the one that Alex built one time, though, that didn't pass like that, she listed too much. I don't know what they had to do to her, but, you know, he built some head boats years back. And
You
I
get too
think
much
there's one
dead
of
roads
them.
on the list.
Huh?
I said, you get too much dead roads on the list,
But,
it'll ain't worse.
they got it fixed, whatever it was, but she didn't pass the Coast Guard inspection. But I stayed away from them kind of boats. I didn't want to get involved with them.
We have built something like that though.
Well, I mean, the head boats, I'm not,
Well, we really appreciate this, everyone. Houston, thank you so much for coming today. I think we really have a very good picture. Y'all gave us a really good picture of what's going on here. I feel we could come back many, many times and never really get to the end of it. I know it's a really long-standing and deep tradition, and we've just really been honored that you shared it with us. We're gonna take back some really great stories, I think.
that boat there that the boy's looking at,
Uh-huh.
I ran over Steve's father's dory one night with that boat.
Same boats had some, that's the one I like got killed in, when Damien got in the race in, that same boat there.
But,
This is the racer.
There was me and another feller and his wife now. They wanted to go to ride one night in her. And we had her off down there. And it was, like I say, during the night, and we were running down the island shore, wasn't running hard, and just had her out on it good. And directly, the other feller's wife said, is that a boat ahead of us? I looked and I saw the two port lights in the cabin. And I said, well, I'm not going to go around ahead of him, so I went behind him. I looked right there, and there was a skiff who was towing her, but he had a 22-foot boat behind that 38-foot boat. Then he had that dory. We run on across her. Knocked a hole in that one, she sunk.
Down the fleet boat, ready?
But he was well, I wasn't expecting him to be that far as they were behind him. Wow.